Dear friends, hello. I would like to welcome very special guest. His name is Sam Liebowitz. And you know, when I start preparing for the interview with him, I couldn't stop watching his interviews because he has really so many things to tell. And I think it will be very, very precious time for us. He is the conscious consultant, which is maybe not very common uh, for me, the first time I meet this name, conscious consultant, I'm already interested. Talk radio executive producer, wellness center director. So he's interpreter since 1993, and he worked in so many spheres you cannot imagine. Dear Sam, hello, I'm happy to see you.
Hi, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today.
It is my pleasure and honor. Dear Sam, tell me please, you worked in real estate, in IT, you worked with the computers, you're living in New York, you're having wellness center in Manhattan. And I have so many questions to you. But the first, because Hidden Hero actually a platform that helps people to promote their brands, to go global. Let's say if you sit in Moscow, but you want people in New York to know about you, or in Paris. That is what we are made for, Hidden Hero, to unblock our heroes. My first question is still about the brand. I know you have a radio show and you interview people from 110 countries. Maybe it's not 110, maybe it's 127. Who knows? Who counted them? So what do you think? How for experts, mentors, authors, teachers, writers of the books like you are, to promote the brand? Is it you think, possible? For me, as a former diplomat in Japan, I think it's a kind of impossible mission, Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise. Do you think it's possible to promote your brand somehow?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The thing is it's, you don't want to think in terms of that it's promoting your brand. It's how are you serving your target market? How are you serving the people who love you, who you can relate to, who can relate to you, who you just resonate with? When you show up and you're giving people real value, when you're really giving of yourself, your knowledge, your experience, people will find you. And people will appreciate you. And that's what really everything is about these days. It had started to move in this direction before the pandemic, but since the pandemic, marketing has completely shifted. And everything now is about being in service. If you look at who's being the most successful in promoting their brand and who they are, it's the people who are giving the most of themselves.
I see. So it's a little bit different now. Now you cannot relate only to people who love other people and who can serve other people. Sam, about yourself, you changed so many jobs and ended up being this beautiful word, conscious consultant. Who is conscious consultant? What are you doing?
So for many years, I've been an entrepreneur for many years. I've had many different businesses, different industries, and I've loved everything that I've done. I have lots of interests. And what happened was about 12, 13 years ago, the life had just kind of nudged me back into this direction, this sort of spiritual path, I'll call it. And I started taking these workshops, these workshops about healing and how to heal, not because I ever intended to become a healer or anything, but just for my own healing, just for myself, that I had been through some very difficult times early in life. And it was really for my own good. But then there was that one workshop where they pair you up with somebody and you do this method you just learned. And I helped this woman to release a condition that she had had since she was 6 years old.
Yeah, I talked about bronchitis. Yeah, this woman who couldn't breathe. Yes, yeah.
Yes. And so, yeah, I was shocked. I was as shocked as she was that, she can all of a sudden breathe so much easier. And she had so much congestion just minutes before. And so it was like, oh, like I can use this to help people. Like, it's not just for me. It's not just my own healing. Like, I can actually do something with this. And so I had been a business consultant for many years. I was helping people to change careers, to start businesses, to do all kinds of things. And it kind of just, when I sat with it just kind of came to me, well, you're still kind of a consultant. You're just a different kind. Now, when I work with people, I work with looking for what's their underlying energetic pattern. What's the energy that they're bringing to the situation? What's their perspectives? What do they believe in? And so I work much more holistically with somebody. So typically people will come to me because they have some kind of challenge in their business life and their career, and they're stuck in some way. And then we find out what's getting them stuck, and we find out what's the shift that needs to happen for them to be unstuck. And inevitably, not only does it help with their business, but it helps in their personal life, with their friends, with their family, because we are who we are, and how we show up is really what creates the situations around us. So when we shift in one way, it really does affect our whole life.
Sam, but how to shift? Let's say if you want to earn a lot of money, I was working in Nikkei. Nikkei is the third largest newspaper in the world, which is financial index. I had the chance to meet very, very rich and very, very oligarchic people,
Sure.
and it's not always that people with money, they are very pleasant or very cute. Or very often it's creative people who are in the theater or, in the movies, or they're very charming and something. Or maybe doctors, they're very charming to somebody. So how for these people who are very charming, very cute to survive? Because they cannot earn a lot of money. I don't know, there is some contradiction between being charming and earning a lot of money? What do you think?
No, not at all. Not at all. I've met many, many really successful business people who were truly good people, who are kind, who are not what you think of as the typical, A-type personality. So it's a myth that, that nice guys finish last, right? That old saying. It's an absolute falsehood. And as a matter of fact, I would say that today, it's actually harder to be successful if you're a nasty person, because we're so interconnected now. People talk more than ever before. People will just not bother. They won't work with you. They'll go elsewhere. Millennials these days, if they don't like the environment they're working on, they're gone at lunchtime. They don't even stick around till the end of the day. So to make money, when you're in a creative field and you're having a hard time with making a living, there can be a lot of different things. Look, you don't have to give up being creative, but it's always about giving value. It's always about being of value to other people. And so if what you're doing, if people don't perceive, and it's a lot about perception too, if people don't perceive the service or the product you have as being valuable to them, they're not going to buy it. They're not going to pay for it. So the question is, how can you take what you do and shift it in a way that adds more value to somebody's life? And it could be maybe the people you're trying to work with don't value it, and maybe you just need to work with different kinds of people, or it could be what you're doing, maybe you need to shift. But it's always about bringing value into somebody's life, because the more value you bring into somebody's life, the more they're willing to pay you for that value.
So you mean sometimes it can be about the time. So don't expect that if you bring value, immediately it will happen today. Yeah, maybe you need to wait a little bit. Maybe it will happen tomorrow, or maybe even after tomorrow.
Well, I believe it's always up to us. The less resistance we have to receiving, the quicker it will come to us. Because I am a big believer that we are the creators of our own life, and that if life is giving us evidence that something's out of alignment, that something's not working, it's something inside of us that's out of alignment. And it's more important to kind of look within than it is to look external. Now, of course, there are always successful strategies. There are successful ways of doing things. But if we're not showing up from a place of being open to receiving, And we may think we are, but we might not be really. But if we're not really open to receiving, then there's going to be some resistance there. Things aren't going to work out. People say they're going to pay you and then they don't. Yes. Are there people who will take advantage of you? Absolutely. But why did you work with that person in the first place?
Mhm.
Unconsciously, we kind of knew, we could feel what's going on. There must be there's some unworthiness, or there's something within us that's causing us to not to work with somebody who wouldn't value us. When we value ourselves, we won't work with somebody who won't value us.
I like
So
what you said in one of your interviews, that your cup should be overflown. Only then you can give something to others. If you don't have enough of water or flowers or apples, how can you give it to them? So the
absolutely.
how to fill us, how to make the cup full.
Well, what excites you? What overflows you? What do you enjoy doing? What feeds your soul? Taking care of ourselves, practicing self-care is a way of physically demonstrating to your mind that you do care about yourself. We have a tendency to think like, oh, I need to work really hard and I'll take care of my health and my life and everything else afterwards. No, it doesn't work that way. If we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not going to do well in business. We may do well for a while, but eventually we'll crash and burn. So we need to fill ourselves up. So that means, maybe not working all the time. Maybe it needs to do something creative on the side. Or maybe it means connecting with a friend who you love, enjoy talking to. Maybe it means going out and getting a massage. Maybe it means, pampering yourself in some way. But it's doing something for yourself that makes you feel good, that's good for you, not overindulging in sweets or being lazy, but something that's good for you that
No, it
helps you
sounds
take care of
very
yourself.
tempting. It sounds very tempting and, exciting. Yeah, because it's nice and it's pleasant to listen to. By chance, it so happened that I'm shooting now a movie that is
Oh.
called Forever Young. It's about
Ah.
people who don't want to become old. And my oldest hero, he is 83 years old. And,
Mm.
when he arrived in Dubai for shooting, all my crew was shocked because the way how he stands, the way how he walks, the way how his spine, and his wife is 67 but she looks 50, and he is 83 but he looks 60. So all of us, we were shocked. And he said that to be young, there are 12 points that he has, but one of the
Mhm.
points is to give good for people. I think it resonates with what you're saying, to do good for people.
Yes, absolutely. When we don't feel good about what we're doing and how we're showing up in the world, it will take a physical toll on us. But when we show up and we're contributing and we know we're contributing and we're doing well and we're helping people, we feel good about ourselves. Our energy goes up. And when our energy goes up, the cells in our body function better. We have this tendency to think that our body is separate from our emotions, is separate from our thoughts, is separate from our spirit. It's all interconnected. It's all part of one whole. So the better we feel inside, the better physically we are, the better we show up, the younger we look, the more energy we have, the more people want to be around us. It's getting past this idea that things are discrete and separate and that we can separate and compartmentalize different parts of our life. It doesn't work, and it leads to dis-ease. It leads to problems that will eventually just drag us down.
But you were saying that there are 4 points: mind, spirit, heart, and one point I forgot. What is the
Body,
fourth one? Body.
body,
So
body is very important.
how to connect? For example, my problem is very often I'm flying in the skies. I'm dreaming. I'm a romantic person. So of
Yes.
course, romanticism is not very. Nowadays, how to say, it's a little bit strange. How to
Yeah.
put all this together, these 4 parts you were mentioning?
Okay. So a body is about our physicality. It's about our presence. So doing any kind of exercise, you connect to your body. If you exert your physical body, working out or doing something, going for a walk in nature is a wonderful way to connect to the body. And when we're doing something very physical, it's hard not to be present. All right.
Definitely.
Heart is emotion. It's about connection. It's about being with people. So if you want to connect with your heart, really connect with a friend, connect with somebody who you really like or love, and just have a conversation, whether they're, in the next room or in the next country. It doesn't matter now. Everything is so virtual. Even having a phone call or a Zoom call with somebody, just that connection helps us to feel more comfortable in our heart space. Mind is about like planning. So it's if you want to connect to your mind, and this usually isn't a problem for us because the world so glorifies the mind. We're really good at mind stuff, but the rest of the stuff we're not so good at. But mind is planning, recording, measuring, coming up with a budget. Stuff like that is very good for mind stuff. And then for spirit is about our inspiration. It's daydreaming. It's like what you said before. It's flying. Meditation is a great way to connect to spirit, but think about it not as like, connecting to your angels. I mean, some people do like to do that, but it's more about connecting to that part of you that's open to the wisdom of life, and just sitting still and being open to what comes to you. We tend to be so busy and we're rushing from here to there. Sometimes just being with ourself without any distractions, without our phone, and just being present to what's going on inside the body is a way to open up to our connection to everything.
It's nice you said in one of the interviews, even when you're in the family and there are a lot of people around you, you think you're resting, but you're not resting because you're looking at them, you're responding to them, you're thinking how not to hurt anybody or something. That means you're not resting because you're surrounded even with the
Right.
people whom you love. So at the end of the day, sometimes you should be alone.
Absolutely. I cannot, and I mean, people may think, well, with this pandemic and social distancing, I feel more alone than ever. Yeah, but even though we may not physically be with each other, we're still on social media. We're on our phones. We're, looking at this on our computers. But just stopping all the stimulation, just stopping and paying attention to our breath. I mean, if there's one tool that I can give to the audience to help them with anything, it's paying attention to your breath. Just remembering to take a deep breath in, breathe it out nice and slow. I mean, just do that and you can feel your state even shift a little bit. And I love to do it like right before I go to do something, before I have a meeting, before I have a phone call, before I have a conversation with somebody, just to take that deep breath and to get centered back into my body and to feel what's going on. Is there nervousness? Is there excitement? Is there worry? Is there concern? Just being present to that, so that that energy doesn't have to control you and what you're about to enter into. Your breath is key to so many things. And as you were talking before about people who want to live long and healthy, I do too. I know lots of people that way.
Don't worry, Sam, you will live long and healthy. I touch wood. In Russia, we touch wood. And
Yeah.
I touch a lot of woods next to me because, all these things like breathing, giving good to people. Even now, you're giving some good tips to the audience and being generous. And also interesting fact that you're working in this wellness center with your wife.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody can work with relatives, especially with the person whom you love the most. How do you manage to do that? Is it difficult for you? Some people say it's impossible. Why it's possible for you?
Well, either it works great or it doesn't work at all. And I know many people who, when they started working with their partners, that was the end of the relationship. But for us, it works really well because we're very complementary. My wife and I are very different people. We're good at very different things. And she's also a therapist and she's very open, but she's very good at the clinical stuff, but business stuff, forget it. She doesn't want to be bothered. I kind of manage the books. I manage things. I work with my own clients as well, but I do things very differently from the way she does it. And so she does her thing and I do my thing, and we support each other, but we don't get into each other's business so much. I mean, we talk about things, we talk about important decisions to make and planning and moving forward. But when it comes to the actual work, I let her do her thing. I let her do it however she wants to do it. And I support her, and then she supports me in return. And we also communicate a lot. I mean, this is true of anything, whether you're in business with your partner or you're married or you just have a partner. Communication. I cannot stress it enough. I've seen 90% of the problems I see out there between people is because of a lack of communication or misunderstandings. The more communication, the more you work things out every single time.
Absolutely. One of my friends, I don't want to tell the name, she was married and then her husband went to throw the garbage and he never came back. And she didn't understood why, but he put a lot of roses in the flat. And I think because they're very different, maybe one person wants to go to parties every day and the other person wants to save money and just go camping. And for him, is one jeans is enough and one T-shirt enough. And he doesn't understand how it's possible to spend $5,000 on one dress. And the other person doesn't understand, if you love your wife, why not to spend this 5,000? It's just, without communication, maybe once a year you can do it, or maybe once in 10 years, but you should talk about it. Otherwise, it's a secret. It's a secret. And my last question to you is about relationship. You were talking that there is some secret, one person, another person, and there is relationship separately, or how does it?
So we have this kind of notion that when we're in a relationship with someone, it's only about us and them, and it's about how they're relating to us, how we're relating to them. But what we don't realize is there's actually a third entity involved, and that's the relationship itself. And so when you're looking at how you're feeling, it's not just how you're feeling about the other person, but how do you feel about the relationship? Are you committed to the relationship? Not just are you committed to the other person, but are you committed to the relationship? Do you value the relationship? Do you nurture the relationship? Not just do you value and nurture the other person, because there's a difference. And so when we understand that there's this third entity called the relationship that connects the two of us, then it's things work a little differently. Then there's, I don't know how to describe, but the energy around it is a little easier. It's a little smoother. And also communicating that to the other person, that it's not just about how they feel about you, but how do they feel about the relationship? Because you may love the other person, but you may hate the relationship. Or you may have a very tumultuous feelings around the other person, but you love the relationship because it feeds you in some way. So that's why I think sometimes we get a little confused that we see two people and we think like they really shouldn't be together. This really shouldn't work, but somehow they really work. Well, it's because they both have a good relationship to the relationship. My wife and I are such different people. I've had many people, astrologers and people who do hand analysis, like look at us and go like, how are the two of you even together? Mm-hmm. And it's because we both value the relationship as well as each other.
Sam, don't you think that before people had better relationships? There were a lot of couples who lived together 50, 60 years and they die in one day and they're so fragile and they're so cute. And nowadays people get married almost every year. I don't know, maybe every 10 years. But do you notice that, or it's just my observation?
So like in my parents' generation, and maybe even maybe more her parents' generation, when people got married, it wasn't for love. they got married for practical reasons, usually. Sometimes, lots of times it was arranged. Sometimes it was just, oh, this person will provide for me, or this person will give me children. And what happened was, but because they stayed together and they were committed, they grew to love each other because they stayed together so long. And they weren't necessarily in love when they got married. But these days, we look for the love. We look for that, oh, that passion. But passion isn't sustainable. Passion is actually the same energy as excitement. It's also the same energy as like fear, and the adrenaline is rushing, and your body physically cannot sustain that. But when you come together for the relationship, when you come together for something a little more practical, that maybe it's not as passionate, maybe it's not as, the fireworks aren't going off, but you're committed to each other over time, then you develop something stronger. But because we're constantly looking for that passion, and then inevitably in time the passion goes, and so then we look for the passion with somebody else. And we don't understand that relationships can evolve and transform and change, and it can turn actually deeper, even though maybe that passion might not be the same. So it's a question of, what are we valuing? And where are we really placing what we see as serving us ultimately? So, I mean, in some ways you can say, we're happier now because we're married, but in many ways we're not. Things are more complicated. There's more stuff going on in this world. There's more challenges to deal with. There's more changes. I mean, I just think about my mom in her lifetime, the changes that she saw. She was born in 1919. She died in 2019, just 6 months shy of her 100th birthday. And she saw incredible changes in the world in her lifetime. And I think of the people my age, your age, people younger than us, what the amount of changes they're going to see in the world in their lifetime. It's tremendous, tremendous. And that makes life much more complicated. So it's really, I don't know. I just feel it's like we need to come back to some of the basics with ourselves first, so that we can show up well. And when we show up well, then we can have a better partnership with others. And even relationships themselves are transforming. I mean, there's all kinds of different kinds of relationship structures now that I hear people talk about. It's not so much mainstream, but it's much more common than it used to be. So I really think being flexible, being adaptable, the people who are able to thrive in the world today are the people who can think differently, are the people who are open to change, are the people who can, regardless of what happens tomorrow, they learn to kind of swim where the waters are taking them and not be so fixed and so stuck that things have to be a certain way. When we get stuck that way, then there's a lot of resistance. Life is much more difficult.
Sam, I understood why you took so many jobs, why you tried so many professions. We have a very famous writer in Russia, Chekhov, who was doing something like you, who was a doctor, who was, was making houses, bricklayers, or I don't know what, doctor, something like you, because now you can use all that knowledge of being flexible. And also you use one word a lot today, which is to serve yourself, to serve people, to take care of yourself, to take care of other people, to take care of relationship. And that is really beautiful, because you give a lot of hope. You give a lot of hope in these pandemic times that it's possible to overcome that and to become stronger, better, cleaner, and more powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's my feeling from you. And I touch wood, because I want to be, maybe one day you will be the hero of our movie, because I'm sure that I want you to work good, to be good in your family, and let your center flourish, and let your books appear, and really let this consciousness consultant job continue, because really nowadays all of us, we need it, to that extent. The other, we want to listen to somebody like you.
Yeah.
Because
thank you.
Good mood,
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, sometimes I feel I was just a late bloomer. It just took me a long time to figure out what really is makes me feel best. And now I've really been sticking with what I've been doing now for about 10 years, which is my longest streak of staying with any one thing. But yes, thank you so much. And yeah, that's really, what I hope with my show, with my book, with all the things that I do. It's about inspiring people, uplifting people, empowering people, and having some fun in the process. But let people know that we actually are much more powerful than we know. That's why that's the subtitle to my book, Everyday Awakening. You are more powerful than you know, because we are. And it may not feel like